Three, two, one. What's going on, folks? Welcome to 34 Questions. For tonight, we have Davo in the building. How you doing tonight, Davo?
Very well, thank you, Joe.
Thank you. How are you doing tonight, man?
Is it one of the questions, or is this just small talk?
This is usually my like introductory question is just how you doing. This was before I was trying something different before I break down the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just ask you, man, how you been? You've been doing great. You've been doing well. How you been lately?
I think like most people, I'm barely holding it all together, but keeping up the best attitude that I can, despite it all. It's all a part of being a certain age and having a career going where you have your good days and your bad days. But I don't like to answer "How are you?" with "I'm fine, thanks," if I don't mean it. So today, I'm actually quite well.
I'm glad to hear. I know it's a bunch of ups and downs. That's just how life is, sort of sometimes. So I'm glad to catch you on a good day.
So am I. In a bit of that one, I would have answered very truthfully, and I don't know if you'd charge by the hour. So
no, it's all free, man. We just two people having a conversation. But thank you, and hopefully we could dive in deeper as this podcast goes along. But for you and for the folks out there who are unfamiliar with the flow of the show, break it down real quick. And we typically start off with a warm up. We'll about 3 questions long. Then after the warm up, we'll jump into an icebreaker where you'll get to choose which path you'd like to take. We'll cross that road when we get there. After the icebreaker, we'll jump into the wheel of fate. In the wheel, whichever number it lands on, that's how the conversation will kind of flow. After all that, we'll finish out with some closeout questions. Sound good to you, Davo?
sounds sweet.
Awesome, man. So, since I asked you how you were doing, let's just jump into the fire.
Okay.
So my first question for you in the warm-up is, what would you like the audience to know about you, man? If you were meeting somebody for the first time, like kind of like how we are right now, what would you like the audience to know?
I'm a filmmaker.
See, you got
So that's how I express. Yeah.
I was gonna say you got the birthmark, man. Like you were meant to be a filmmaker.
Well, thankfully, this is not a birthmark, but it was
Gotcha.
something which I had done when I turned 30. Just because throughout my 20s, I'm like, I shouldn't get a tattoo. It might be a career stopper, but it was not. But at age 30, I'm like, I don't care anymore. And I got it done, and I'm going to fill in the frames later on, but we'll get to that. So that's what I do as a career, and that's how I kind of explore my heart and soul, what makes me tick, and express whatever life lessons I've learned or have heard others discuss along the way. So I can't really articulate how it all feeds together, but my career is who I am. It is how I express myself. And if it wasn't for that medium, I would have been some other type of storyteller. It's just that was the medium that I found the most direct to how I want to get my soul across to the rest of the world.
For sure. And I'm always gonna dig in a little deeper. But so, what is it about film that spoke to you that kind of made you be like, that's what I want to do? Go ahead.
Well, I was a middle child and had a lot of time to myself growing up, which was a good and a bad thing. I'm very much in my own head, very imaginative. And a lot of my younger childhood years, I remember being in some sort of outside of reality story, not because I was trying to escape reality per se, but because I was in my own head. So it was kind of a reverse engineered out of reality. And because I'm a very visual person, I'm a visual spatial learner. I'm also a visual spatial giver of information. So that was just a medium that kind of called out to me. And I was born in a good era, in a good country, in a good time in the world when this stuff is also accessible. So back in the day, to get one's hand on all the gear that is around me right now would have been inaccessible to someone from a working class background, whereas these days it's not so out of reach. And that's been when I had that epiphany of I was actually brought into this at a very good time in the world. I thought, well, that's my luck, I guess.
No, I got you. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever read, what's the book called? Outliers? Have you come across? There's a book called Outliers, right? And one of the chapters emphasizes sometimes like being born at the right time, like you were saying about just being right era for where you're at and how everything kind of comes together. But yeah, that's what it reminded me of. Um, I had a question about so being a visual person and being really focused on that. Would you say you're a dreamer, like where you can visually remember dream, like incorporate that into your stories at all?
Absolutely. The last film I made, part of its inception was a dream I had years and years ago, which I held on to as like, that'd be a nice way to end the story. But through the process of writing it and creating characters and their arcs and whatnot, but the actual dream itself got kind of lost in the mix, but the idea of it's still there. It was one of those ones where you just remember a certain something that somebody says to you, and that was just the outline for an ending for the last film I made. But also as a dreamer, a lot of that is your subconscious kind of processing what's going on, which is effectively what I'm doing with what I make as a film director. Is I'm processing my experiences, both physical and emotional and mental, into something which is more tangible. So that's almost making of the dream, if I can be so audacious to say that.
No, for sure, for sure. And that gives me hope, man, because I am also a dreamer, and I love when I still remember my dreams. Sometimes I don't, but when I do, I always like waking up feeling like, wow, I was just either super entertained or I felt like I just came from another dimension and up into this one. But yeah, you gave me an idea because I had this one dream where like I did write down a whole like maybe 15-minute screenplay about it. After a few years, and it still felt short, 15 minutes long. And when I would share it with friends who had experience in that industry, they're like, giving me pointers and stuff. But what you just said about taking a dream, maybe the best part that you remember being like just a piece of screenplay might really help me out, and it'll challenge me to kind of think about, okay, what in the story brought you to that point, the dream. So yeah, no, that was just a great tip that I picked up right there. Thank you for that. I have more questions about films, but can't talk about films all day, right?
Oh, but we won't.
I got you. Let's jump into the second warm-up question, which is, how would you like to be honored, man? Like, if there was a way, we could express the energy you possess, what sort of act could?
How would I have people honor me?
Honor you, man. Like, the way I kind of frame it is like, let's say you moved away from Australia, I believe, or
I'm Australian. Yep.
Yeah, if you moved from Australia to the States or to the United States, and then your family and friends back in Australia was like your birthday or something, they wanted to kind of like, just feel like they're celebrating with you, or like having you bring that feeling back that you were with them. What sort of act could they?
Anything which celebrates self-esteem and the individual, but in a collective group setting, if that makes sense.
I got you. I mean, I know it's difficult. Yeah,
Articulate. Yeah.
In my mind, I'm trying to think about what that would look like. But you mentioned self-esteem, man. Like, well, why is that important?
Well, that's something which I have battled with my entire life, and I think that's what attracted me to come on this podcast. Was I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I've had a lot of time over the last 30 odd years to do a lot of introspection, and I've come to many important milestones and crossroads where self-esteem and self-worth are things which I really used to struggle with. And at certain key points in my life, I have climbed up onto the next level of healing from that, of coming to a greater sense of worth and self-love. So giving myself permission to do what I do and to combat all the outside voices saying what I can't do, how I should be doing it, and so on. All that's been steadily muted over the years, but I never lose track of the fact that there was a time when I didn't have the knowledge the vocabulary or the roadmap to see it as being anything other than this is just the way the world is, deal with it. So if there was going to be a theme in the thesis of Davo's life story, it would be self-esteem and honoring that.
I got you, man. That's super interesting you bring that up, man. Yeah, no, self-esteem is a huge thing for me as well. Growing up, I would say up until I was 18, it was like the biggest thing on my mind, right? Like how people perceive me, what I thought about myself. And, growing up, I really, really didn't like myself. There's things going around my world. And I guess being a teenager, you kind of put things upon yourself, even though it's not your fault and it has nothing to do with you. You feel like you're contributing or you're making things worse. And even so, growing up, I would say that I don't think I've gotten to a point where I can say like I 100%. But I think I've gotten to a point where I feel like I understand myself a lot more better. That kind of helps inform my decisions and that I want to, or just shaping my path. And sometimes I don't know, like in my mind, what would it take me to reach that level of self-love? And I don't even know, like if I'm looking out into the world, like I can't tell who is in that mind or who 100% loves themselves. We talk about it, people say it. I don't know. I feel like we're always going to be our own worst critic, and we can be brought to that space depending on what happens in our life. So for me, I try to be open about that. Not that I'm not trying to. It's just I don't know if I'm ever going to get to very like, oh yeah, I love myself. Maybe I'm just trying to prove something to me. But for you, yeah, you feel like you're at that level, or have you figured it out? Have you been able to, work through things?
I've definitely put a face to what it is I'm trying to honor, and that is myself many years ago. I have a photo of myself at like age 4. I'm 34 now, so I can now look at that with a certain parental "I've got you" kind of mentality. One thing I've noticed from your podcast and how you speak with your guests is that you tell them "I got you" a lot, and I found that to be very triggering in the best way. Of like when someone says that they've got you and they have your back, so to speak, that's something which people with low self-esteem or low self-worth are just crying out for. So I say to that little 4-year-old Davo photo a lot, I got you, you're in safe hands, and your dreams and wishes are going to be honored. But the best way that I can bring those to you, outside of just totally spoiling him, just he's being heard. Because as I said, being a middle child wasn't always being heard, and having to sort of fight for that time to be number one. It took me 30 years to get there. So when people are saying that they're reaching the point of true self-love, if it comes from a place of like self-esteem versus ego, because one is like your own compass, the other one is more external validation, and it really just depends on who that love is for and who's trying to be proven to.
I got you, man. I can tell you're a deep thinker, man. And yeah. It's funny. The "I got you" phrase. I don't know. I didn't think about it being that way. For you to pick it up in that way, that means a lot to me, man. I got you, man. All right, dog. Here we go with the last question in the warm up, which is, on a scale from 1 to 10, how well do you know yourself?
That changes constantly. Theoretically, I know myself very well, but I also surprise myself constantly because I'm an evolving being. And if I had to put a number on it, I would say a nice conservative 6 or 7.
Okay.
Because I could answer questions about myself all day. So I know myself on a theoretical level and on a retrospective. But if you were to ask me, are you going to love yourself in 2 weeks' time? It's like, I don't know. And that is that like, but you'll always like yourself if you have good self-esteem. It's like, well, no, I have my moments when I really don't. And I know that about myself. So it all kind of ties back to, I know myself really well, but I also am not caught up to the idea that there are things about me which I just have either really repressed or haven't yet explored yet.
I got you. I was gonna ask you, like, what would you say is still a mystery that you're trying to see? Like for me, one of them is probably like, am I really gonna make it? And what does that mean? That could be a lot of things, but in my mind, that's one of those things where I was raised, with very supportive parents. I was one of those respectful kids towards adults. So adults always felt like adults had this expectation of me to become something, be something, which I don't think I ever became. They expected of me. So yeah, but I'm still trying. I still got dreams and I still got hopes, and I've tried to be a rapper, which I felt like was part of that ego externalization thing. Tried to spread a message through clothing, also becoming a part of my ego. But this this platform, this podcast, really makes me, I think I've solidified something where I don't have to feel like it's about me. I just keep pushing and trugging along. Hope the world can kind of, accept it and embrace it, what it is. And that's what I'm hoping. So that's a mystery for me. Is this really gonna, get me to a place where I can finally feel like I've reached the expectations others have had and maybe my expectations from and for you, what is go ahead.
Depending on who you ask, I would say that you've definitely made it to a great standard in that I'm in Australia and I came across your podcast by accident and thought I need to be on this thing because it's about authenticity and about being one's genuine self. And it puts effective strangers, you and I haven't really spoken more than 2 words prior to this interview, and yet we're both wanting to say, here I am, this is me. And that's something which, as dangerous that can be around people who don't know, when it's in a safe space amongst safe people, can be very liberating and very healing. So the fact that you're global, and this will be said to people in my circles who are other side of the country, but my country, outside the world to you, is a great reach. And there was a time when the first time I had a film for sale on Amazon, for example, I thought, I've made it because there are people outside of my sphere, on the other side of the sphere, who can get a hold of my work and get a glimpse into who I am and what I'm about. I thought, well, that's one of the many times I'm like, I've made it. So yeah.
I got you. I didn't even know your work is on Prime, man. I remember going to your website.
It was.
Oh, I got you. For sure.
You asked me about a mystery to me, did you say?
Yeah, a mystery for yourself that you said 6 and 7. So, in that last 3-ish, what do you think you're trying to figure out?
Well, just now, I'm at the point where I'm actually talking with my partner about actually having kids. So we're at the point of, I can look at my young self and be like, I got you, man, and you come first for me as a parental figure, but how the hell I'm going to be a physical, literal parent is something which, I suppose it should, terrifies me. So, but in a good way. I don't think there's any challenge going into in life which didn't terrify me, which didn't turn out to be a really great thing. So that's the conversation that we're having now, and about the logistics of how to get it to a place as close to the right time as we can. And that's sort of the next few chapters ahead for me. So that's where I'm at.
That's huge, man. That's huge. Yeah, for your kids, man. What's like in your mind? I feel like every parent kind of is never ready, right? That's what they tell me, because I'm not ready either.
Yeah.
But what do you feel like is one of those important things that you're just trying to get them to realize and understand at the youngest age possible? I feel like that's something that parents are trying without even thinking about it. but there is some sort of moral or lesson that parents still, like for me, respecting elders was the thing I did for a long time. After it's build that in me. For you, any thoughts?
That we all belong, that we're all worthy, and the things that make us different when we're young are assets when we're older.
Say that one more time.
The things that made us different when we're younger are assets to us when we're older.
Oh, I got you. How were you different when you were a child, if you don't mind me?
I was intellectually mature for my age, but I added like a complete tool. I was very emotionally engaged, whereas most of the young boys under 12 don't want to talk about their feelings. I had a pretty pronounced stammer, which I've carried through into adulthood, which is a trauma response, and it became a good litmus test to people who actually wanted to get to know what I'm saying. So I just found that those things set me aside from being just one of the group. But even back then, I thought, well, I can make a positive out of this. So I had a lot of introspection time and a lot of imagination time, which was at the expense of having a very social time in my childhood adolescence. So the good came from that, but it took many years to notice that and articulate it and really be thankful for it. Because as with most children at that age, all I wanted to do was just be one of everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when was that realization point? You feel like we have similar upbringings in a way. Yeah, because I was an only child. I had a lot of imagination time, but I never thought I thought it was normal. I thought everybody was living this kind of. But yeah,
when you're a child, everything around you is normal until you're shown it's not, and then you realize, wow, this is the lot I got in life. Okay. I don't think it was ever a specific epiphany. It was really just a slow realization of I suppose probably first coming to terms with the fact that like this is my lot in life, but then making the advantage of that. So I didn't get into a lot of trouble as a teenager, mostly because I didn't have friends to rat me out or any witnesses. And I got up to a lot of not even shady, but just like things that you probably don't want your adolescent to be up to. But again, having that outsider status meant that I was able to kind of go under a lot of radars of stuff. And when that was to me, I'm like, oh, okay, this is nice. But it's always nice to share those spoils with. So it was only once the school years ended and we were passing to adulthood, I was able to kind of pick out people from my own tribe and be myself, and that would attract people who had a similar mindset. So it's just the long game, which isn't something which we're really taught growing up, is very, you're young, I want to grow up so I can have all these things and be myself as I see myself. But when you get to that point, you want to be that age again to really enjoy the innocence that comes along with it. So it's, it's like...
Dude, I don't know if you heard in my previous episodes, but I work at a high school, right?
Yes, yes, I followed your past episodes.
So one crazy thing happened last week when, it's after school. There was a guy, random stranger, and me and my coworkers were like, oh, he's tweaking on something. Because it doesn't happen normally. Anyways, he walks in and I catch him and I'm like, hey man, what's going on? And he's like, oh, I used to go to school here, and I went to 2 different schools. This was one of the schools I went to. Like, I thought if I could come back here, it would turn me 18 again. So that's how we kind of knew he was tweaking. But it was just like, damn. And like, I wasn't even mad at him. I was just kind of like, man, I wish that's how it worked, man. And I just told him, like, yeah, I don't think it works that way. I'm sorry. I wish it did. He kind of understood that and left. I was like, holy crap. Like the feeling that people have sometimes, this guy acting on it, you know? So yeah, go ahead.
I've also done that. I also went back to my old schools, and it was a really profound moment because I kind of went up to the front office just being like, is there anything from this time period? So for me, it would have been like the 90s through to the early noughties. And they said everything from that era is archived, put away, and no. And I thought, well, I don't have a lot of that time, but it'd be good to see if it wasn't anything. I then kind of turned to like my left, and there was a that year's staff photos, and there was one teacher from when I was under 12 there who is still there. And I'm like, could I possibly have 5 minutes with this teacher? And they're like, oh, I'll go seek her out. So while I'm waiting there in the front office, this teacher just happens to be wandering past, and I thought that they'd been sent to me already, so there was that kind of awkward moment of, oh, they found you kind of thing. But it was so much like, do you recognize me? She's like, I don't know who the hell you are, sir. And I had that conversation for all of 5-10 minutes with someone who I didn't know at the time was so profoundly influential on me, because I definitely made her life a misery. But I was also quite validated because she said, like, you made my life a misery back then, Davo, because we didn't know what we know now about children's mentality and about how they're coping with stuff and all the rest. And even if we did, we couldn't act on it back in those days. Probably can't really do it now. So you were just a kid growing up, and I found that was very validating and very healing for me. So if people can have the opportunity to revisit moments and people from their childhood, I think that's a very profound thing to seek and to experience.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like when I don't meet a lot of teachers from when I was growing up, but just meeting old classmates, oh man, it brings you back. It makes you feel that age. It's crazy. It brings me.
Just you wait until a student comes to you saying, you changed my life. In 20 years from now, that's going to be a moment for you. So
yeah, man, I try to tell the kids that there's nothing special going on. It's, I'm just trying to do the best I can for them.
just to be a smiling face is enough for some kids.
I hear that, man. I guess I'll be looking forward to that one day. One last question before we move on to the icebreaker. Was there anything before film? If it wasn't film, was there anything that was capturing your imagination? That's just as special.
Oh gosh, I was definitely a writer very young, and I sort of that now because that now becomes my screenplay. So I still use that, but it's not in long form prose. I haven't written a novel or anything to that level. But that's what I otherwise would have done. That's where I was steering myself until I discovered that film was more my medium.
I gotcha. All right, boss. So we got through the warm up. Time for us to move on to the icebreaker portion. Go with the icebreaker. So as you can see, there's 34 seconds on the clock. But
that's my age now.
it's the golden year, man.
Yeah.
What's it called? So you got a choice between a word association or this or that. Which one are you kind of feeling? Or I guess for you this afternoon.
Yes. Let's go association.
Association. I got you. So since you've seen the other podcasts or the other episodes, I will dig into a couple of your answers. Set up. Here we go. In 3, 2, where is this? All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Life.
Ongoing.
Past.
Remembrance.
Knowledge.
Deeply important.
Freedom.
Deeply important.
Lost.
Self.
Believe.
In self.
God.
Beyond.
Crazy.
Me.
Great.
Why not?
Hell.
Always.
Okay, I think we could
Or
start.
we're not rehearsed.
Yeah, no, not rehearsed at all.
I love that.
I gotta ask you. Let me start off with that first one.
Hmm.
You said hell. I said hell.
Yep.
You said always, right?
Always.
Yeah. Why always?
I wish I knew. Okay, just going off what comes to me now, because it's always present as a threat or something to be aware of. So I suppose for me that would mean like having had little glimpses of my own personal hell throughout my life. That's something I need to keep a hold of to like keep myself grounded. It may also be a don't slide back into these times. It may also just be keeping in mind that for every good there's bad, currently. So be present and thankful for the good times. Just don't be too crushed when there's the come down. That might be what I'm picking up.
Gotcha. Has there ever been a way that you've been able to kind of pull yourself out of that? That might be useful.
Expressing it. So again, that's what I personally do with my filmmaking. Is it isn't right away. I definitely do wallow in stuff, and I do have my my own personal ups and downs. But broadly speaking, over the course of months or years, everything which has been a profound loss or a really difficult traumatic time for me has gone into something that I've written and then presented as a work of fiction. So that's how I operate. Not everyone has that, which is a shame because I can't give any other idea as to what else there is in people that they would have, which has that kind of effect. But I would hope that everyone has that in some manner that fits their personality.
I gotcha. And then one other one before we move on to the Wheel of Fate, which was, I think I said lost and you said self. Is that correct? Yeah. Why did self come up for you?
Because to get to where I am, I've had to let a lot go. Either ideals of how things should be. A lot of the people who were around me, who I just took a critical look at and thought, whether you mean well or not, this is not going to work. And I try to see myself as kind of a kaleidoscope, which is always changing. But in order to have that change and that evolution, something which you can see and is quite beautiful and was created needs to be lost or broken, changed in some way for that evolution to occur. So, yes.
I got you. No, I understand what you mean. I wanted to ask, this doesn't have to do with that answer. It's just more like a curiosity of mine. But so, you know, American media, American Hollywood and stuff, it has this thing of like, you know, it's corrupted. You know, there's a lot of players in the system that are very like, you know, up there for a reason, and they can kind of dictate what gets released or what gets promoted, what gets distributed. I believe you're an independent filmmaker. Yeah.
I am, yes.
So yeah, how does that affect you at all? Or like, is that something that you're like, oh, I need to find my breakthrough kind of thing, or is it just like, no, I'll let them do their thing, I'm gonna do my thing? Happy with that?
Gosh, I have a shelf of trophies. I have a big portfolio of films I've made. Those things are so secondary to the fact that I can just do what I do. I reached a point a few years ago where I was having films put onto Prime and other platforms, but there was always a sense of a ticking clock, and hoping that they would renew the contract or there'd be enough sales of my stuff to perpetuate my involvement on the platform and so on. And I found that was seeping into what I'm making. So I wanted to please other people. And whenever I do that, whenever I try to do stuff to please other people, it turns out to be a big disaster. I've got one film in my catalog, which is my go-to, don't do that again kind of thing. But when I finally got the know-how and the balls really to strike out, be proudly independent, and set up my own website, which is my own distribution thing for streaming, DVD sales, and any other sort of physical media, and I can earn a profit off of that and get my head around the idea of I love what I do, and it's all about the heart of it. I also need to make a living off of it, and it's okay to do that. And if anything, it's actually essential for a creative to allow themselves to make a profit of what they do. So I am pulling away from what the greater industry expects or wants, because it hasn't really done me a lot of favors, especially not intellectually or emotionally. And my stuff, I don't know if it's quite underground or art house or whatever. It's just real. It's often quite academic. It's a mix of drama and comedy and all these things put together into one kind of mix to appeal to a certain of deep thinker who loves to be entertained. But when I see like the Hollywood system, I don't see myself winning an Oscar because I couldn't buy into that system. This is again part of just owning, being an outsider and being okay with that and making it work for me.
Hear that, man? I definitely feel what you're talking about. All right, dog. Well, we made it through the icebreaker, and now it's time for us to face Wheel of Fate. No crazy image for that one. I need to come up with something. But yeah, so here's the wheel. Let me give it a spin. Just as a reminder, if anything's too deep, too personal, something you don't want to talk about, feel free to pass. So you have number 19, and number 19 was a light one. But what's been one of your proudest moments? Something that you really feel like you love sharing, or you just love recalling that memory back? Just
always feeling like an outsider, and I was just going to be given that lot in life, I keep saying. When I actually met my soulmate, got married, and thought, I have someone in my life now who gets me, and even at the worst of times has my back. That was an enormous thing for me. So I don't know if I was able to get to that point if I hadn't had a lot of self-love by that point. It's very hard for someone to know how to love if you can't sort of show them how to. And at that point in my life, I'd reached a point of self-honoring, self-actualization, and was open to receiving more than just, there's a second physical person with me. I was seeking someone who actually got me and took the time to understand what makes me tick and respond to that. So once that came to a real marriage of people, I thought, this is something which I never really thought I would be able to attain, and for it to be a healthy relationship which would be long-lasting. It turns out it is, and that's something which young me would have loved to have known about.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, it's when you can't see it as a kid, right? And then it happens as an adult. Yeah, it's one of those. I guess I should reframe that as like, well, what's a moment that your young self would be proud of? That could give it a little more focus. Oh, that's what's up, though, man. I'm happy you have that. I want something. Another curiosity of mine is what's it like for you to like watch that very first film release? Recent one. Yeah. How is that for you?
We need to qualify first film because that can be a number of things.
I got you. Let's say the first one, not the very first one, when you made it as a kid or anything, but like maybe the first one where you felt like, okay, this is my shot to.
Okay, yeah. Well, that would have been a short film I made called Complex in 2013. So it was released in 2014. It's coming up to its 10-year anniversary, which I'm planning for stuff in the new year. When I watch it, I definitely see like I could have framed that better, shot that better. It was back in the days when I was just getting off-camera sound. So we had a second person getting sound with a boom mic and whatnot, but it was a new thing for me back in those days. So I was still learning the grunt work of making films on a fairly large scale, because this thing ran for about 26 minutes in the end. So it was a decent shoot, but it wasn't a 5-minute piece. And yet that film was, to me at least, the gift that keeps on giving. It was so successful. It was the one that got picked up by a distributor at the time and got onto Amazon and got people to sort of give me a second look kind of thing. But it is nowhere near in the same ballpark as to what I can do now. So I look back at it with a lot of nostalgia and a lot of how lucky I was to have people around me who just heard what I was about and did it without being paid, without the expectation of being paid. And that wasn't a problem for them. There's like, we can see what he's trying to achieve, and I want to support him in getting this thing done. And flash forward 10 years to the status I'm at now, I'm not giving them at my door saying, pay me now, you owe me. They're just like, I'm happy that you had what you had, Davo, and it was great to be a part of it. So that's a very fond memory.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You think at that time, was it something where you had to ask for help, or did people just like kind of gravitate towards it? Oh, I'm here, let's do this.
I was definitely asking for help back then, and I don't tend to worry about asking people for help. It's something which a lot of people I know struggle with, and especially in our industry where, especially when you're first starting out, you've got to ask for a lot of freebies and a lot of favors, and a lot of people don't like to allow you to ask for freebies and favors. They really tear you down for doing that. And whenever I see someone asking for assistance and for help and being so like, I can't pay you, but I'm happy to help them, because I can just imagine they're about to get all this vitriol from either the purists or the capitalists or what have you. Also knowing that we as professionals can't just give away what we do for free. So I see both sides of it. But we also have to remember that we all started somewhere, and it means a lot to me to now hire people on from back then into my current stuff and give them the daily fee that they're worth as a thank you for being my support back when I first started and couldn't offer that.
Gotcha. And then one more follow up to that, which is how do you deal with feedback? Like, I know for me, when I was trying to be a rapper and I was making these songs, I would show people, and it would always be like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, good job. And when I really wanted them to like really dig into the lyrics and try to ask me questions about, oh, why was this line written? Like, so for you, is it maybe something you don't even think about anymore? Still something you're hoping people ask you questions about those very specific?
It's definitely something I still think about, because I want people to want to dig for those questions. And that's the two different kinds of feedback that we can get. One is, it's very easy to criticize somebody else and what they're doing, especially people who don't do it themselves. So I can get criticized for, I'm an independent filmmaker, therefore my stuff is not always so slick, or you can kind of tell when I've gotten one scene on one camera type, never seen it on a different camera type, and that the visuals don't quite match or something to that effect. But also when people dig into, well, how did that idea come about? What research went into that concept? And when I tell them, they kind of lean in with more interest. That's a different type of feedback. It's not about finding the holes, it's about finding the depth.
I like that. Finding the depth. Oh, let me pull up the wheel again. With another spin. All right, Davo, this one looks like it's number 4. Please believe me. But number 4 is, it was heavier, but
Yes.
How have you disappointed yourself?
I disappointed myself. I'm not at the point now where I thought I would be at this age. And that's, again, part of the conversation about starting kids now and how that would detract from my career, because I've only just really got my career to a point where I want it to be. But when I think back to where I thought I'd be at this age when I was younger, I would have thought I'd have a lot more sorted out, that I wouldn't be quite so dogged by things that had occurred 30 years ago, which still bother me to this day. I didn't think I'd still have my stamina now, but I've got that for life. And just things which I thought, well, one day I'll overcome this, and one day I'll beat that, and one day I'll have this sort of thing. When you don't have those things, that does become a bit of a personal, I've let myself down feeling. And you make peace with that. I would have liked to have trusted myself better and to have had a better discerning nature of other people, but that's not how I'm built. I'm very much an open person. I'm a hugger of new people. I show interest in people who I just meet when in our industry there's a lot of that narcissistic need for validation and for attention, so you kind of give that up front on a silver platter, and that can go quite bad for you. So it's the knowledge of I'm built how I'm built, and that can be both a blessing and a curse. So it's been a self-disappointment, but with the caveat of I understand that this has come from more than just letting myself down. It's come from a place of my own ingredients. So similarly, it's like if my child was disappointing, it's like you've disappointed me, but I still love you.
Yeah, sure. And you mentioned it earlier, and you mentioned it again just now. Balance.
Yeah.
To me, that's a very big thing. Things aren't always going to be great. Things are going to be bad. It's all about just painting, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, being content with how things flow. Just a heads up, we have about 10-15 minutes left in the pod. Davo, I want to thank you again for coming through. You think we have time for one more spin?
I hope so, yeah. Why not?
Let's do it. Go. Got number 23 this time.
Okay.
What would you like to change about yourself?
Oh gosh. I would like to live closer to what I was just saying, because the ideal of loving myself unconditionally is not an unconditional thing, which I'm happy I mentioned earlier on in this podcast, where it's something which I strive for, but I haven't really got my hands around. It's something which I'm learning to do, but I still have those moments where I notice that I'm feeling more chunkier than usual today, or I'm showing more signs of aging or something, and I'm like, oh, come on, Davo, hit the gym more, take better care of yourself. It's like, but I'm a 34-year-old man. It's like I'm showing some wear and tear in every aspect of my being. So I guess I would like to stop comparing myself as I am to how I saw or do see myself, and just be proud that I'm still here and that I'm doing something in the same realm as what I had envisioned to do 30 years ago. Because a lot of people are seeing what I'm doing and they seem inspired by it, or just encouraged to ask for a bit more of themselves. So if I met myself, would I like the person I was meeting? And I want to reach a point of definitely yes, because there are times when I'm like, I don't always know.
I got you. That resonates with me. Sure. All right, man. Well, you made it to, almost a closeout portion of the pod. Before we do that, there's this exercise I'd like you to take part in. So let's just say you're speaking out to the galaxy, right? You're speaking to the universe at this point. There's this phrase I would like you to fill in, which is I am, I can, I will. So I am blank, I can blank, I will blank. Let me know when you're ready, and set up the stage.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Whenever you're ready, let her rip.
I am worthy. I can overcome. And I will look back on today with as much self-care as I want today. As I need today.
Gotcha, man. You got yourself. So if you ever need a, audio clip of yourself just reminding you of these things, of who you are, what you can do and what you will do, they're gift wrap for you.
Yeah.
But for sure, man. All right. So here we go with the closeout portion of the podcast. This next question is actually previous guest. So this will be interesting. But so shout out to G Dirty, rapper out here in California. G Dirty's question for you is, what's your favorite Filipino food you've ever had it?
I don't think I have. So I'll answer that with I've had a lot of Filipino friends and lovers. So they were quite tasty in their own way.
I got you. No, you're fine. You're fine. They never took you out to a Filipino restaurant or anything, or cooked food for you? That's strange.
Look, I'm from a very Celtic background, very white middle class, and I didn't get around other cultures until I was well into my 20s, just because of where I'm from in the world. I'm from a country town in rural New South Wales, and there's a lot of Greek, Macedonian kind of influence, but not a lot of Islander, Filipino sort of stuff. That came a lot later. So if it had been a broader question, something like what's the any other culture, I could have given you a better answer. But specifically Filipino, that did not enter my sphere until I was much older.
I got you. I was gonna say, man, that sounds like an opportunity out there. If there isn't a spot, maybe if you're still in touch with your Filipino friends, like start a little, kiosk or something, sell some Filipino snacks to invigorate.
I'll be asking them. I'm just sorry I couldn't answer that question with a better, more thoughtful response. Because I guess I was expecting something a bit more emotionally tied, and I was more prepared for that. But something so specific, I'm like, I do not know.
You never know what kind of questions you'll get. But I do have one from another previous guest. So shout out to Julian of the Sneaks and Stats podcast. Julian would like to ask you, what impact do you want to have?
Oh, God. If I can be of any assistance to the thought process of a younger child, we're talking like 12 or under here, who is still coming to see the world outside of themselves and their place in it, and they have this little relation of maybe I don't quite fit in, or people aren't welcoming and allowing me to be, or something, that's just a step along the way, because they won't forget what it feels like to not be included and to not be valued. So the older that we get, being able to value ourselves, that will be a grounding thing, and they'll come across someone, as I do with the kids these days, who don't value themselves. I think I see myself in them, and I can remind them that they are of value. So broadly, I'd like to do what I can and be what I can to inspire others to be themselves and be what they can be.
Gotcha, man. And I'm sure that's already happening. You just don't know it yet. And it'll
I guess
just
if I could be of any kind of role model, knowing that I didn't really have much of a role model like myself. I never looked at a independent filmmaker when I was younger and thought, I'm going to be him someday, because that wasn't the done thing back in those days. So if anyone's able to resonate to who I am and that matters to them, I'd like to know that is something which is beyond me and my own personal interference, and that just comes from their connection to what I've created.
gotcha. My second to last question for you, Davo, is what would you like to ask the next guest on questions? What would you like to ask the next guest?
All right. I think we had a bit of a delay just then.
You're all good.
I guess going back to what I've threaded throughout my interview about the younger self, what would you say to your 4-year-old self, knowing that the information is only going to be passed down, not got back up again? So if you could be face to face with yourself at that young age, what would you tell your 4-year-old self?
My 4-year-old self.
4-year-old self.
Yeah, I want to think about that for a second. I'd like to answer this last question as well.
Cool.
So my 4-year-old self, I had just moved to America, and I was, I guess, just learning English and stuff at that time. I mean, I would just love to tell my younger self to make mistakes while you're young.
Oh, that's nice.
I was very like trying to be perfect, trying to make my parents proud and not cause any trouble for them. So I don't think I was open to making mistakes, and whenever I did, it was like the worst thing in the world and end of the world. And then as I got older, I know as I got older, I started to realize, oh, it's okay to make mistakes. I was like, oh, well, I got a lot to make up for, because I was not doing that as a kid. I definitely think I made up for those mistakes. And now it's everything has become more balanced, right? But for sure, yeah, I think at that age I would have told myself to make more mistakes. Take more chances, take more risks. I was very risk averted for sure. But for sure. Thank you for that question, Davo. And then my last question for you, man. Question that ties everything together. 100, 200, 300 years from now, our descendants watching this video, what would you like to tell them, man?
That I love you for whatever has been passed down from me to you, that we've built a world which is desperately in need of love. And that's not just romantic, that is respectful love. That is honoring someone else's worthiness love. And it would mean a lot to me that you guys are able to actually enjoy the spoils of what we're trying to desperately create today. I
hear you, man. I hear you. They hear you.
And if they haven't been able to enjoy those spoils, bloody well get on it, because we're talking hundreds of years in the future here. Come on.
Every time is a like the future's already happening. The past is still happening. I forgot what theory that was, but yeah, who knows? But yeah, man, I want
the energies now, so it will bounce forward and back, and yeah, it's a butterfly effect.
We'll continue to do so. And it's crazy for me to think that the universe is still growing, it's still expanding, and I don't know how far it's gonna.
Well, no.
There's so many things we as puny humans have no idea what's happening out there in the universe. But any last things you'd like to add before we head out of here, Dave?
We won't know what's going on out there because it is forever expanding, but we can always start with what's going on in here and in here.
For sure, man.
Because that's a universe in and of itself. there's a lot of depth to it if people have the motivation to really go digging, and the fearlessness factor to behold what they find. Because I think we all kind of want to see a bit of a change in some area of our lives. That does always come from within. It's in some manner, even just the realization that I want to change, because things will happen around us regardless. But to be the one to instigate that gives a sense of control and of being a part of the greater picture.
For sure. I don't know if you want to put any plugs in for your work. Like, where can people find your things?
Absolutely.
All
right. Yes. Effectively, just DavoHardyFilms.com. Very simple. That's DavoHardy films.com. In the form to do this podcast, you asked me what word would I use to describe myself. I used Hardy, which means persevering, so I was aptly named. And the name Davo, I have joked, because this isn't for realsies, but we have our version of a what was it called to you guys? Your restraining order is to us a apprehended violence order, or an AVO. So you can't have Davo without a big D and an AVO.
I got you.
So you can find my stuff on that.com, and it'll all be there, because I'm sure this podcast is a good sense of who I am and what I'm all about, but on a much broader scale of what my values are and what I create, it's all up there. The shorts I've made and still have access to, because some are of course lost for the hands of time, and what I'm working on next. So I definitely get a lot more attention from people in the States and Europe than I do in my own country, which is strange. But I think I stand out a lot to you guys, because I'm not a very conservative filmmaker, and I stand out to people in the European countries because I kind of fit in with their very forward-thinking, progressive manner. So it's always fun to see where those analytics come from.
For sure. Analytics, man. I'm trying to keep my eyes away from those things, but I hear
yeah, because for me, otherwise, if you were thinking, I wonder if I can get a guest on who's from Australia. Well, now you have.
No, I appreciate it. And you know what? Australia has shown me some love, man. I think I've had 2 other folks that came on. I don't know if you're into MMA fighting. Jay Willerman, I think. Sorry if I butchered your name. He came through. He was a fighter out there. I think I don't want to give you misinformation, but yeah.
That's fair.
I definitely got love for Australians out there, man. You guys rock with me. You guys vibe with the podcast and find it interesting, and that's cool. That's amazing. Connect with folks, though. And we didn't even get to talk about where we linked up on, and never got to ask you why you love playing the game, because I get that question all the time, like, why you like playing that game? And I'm like, well, it's
all right. So for the listeners out there, we met, you and I, doing an online version of Monopoly.
Yeah.
And I don't know what prompted me to do that. I've always been a big gamer, both console and tabletop, especially those really expensive types. But I just one day had the need for it. I'm like, I need to play Monopoly today. And in amongst the gamers said, that's such a passe, boring, everyone's done it, who wants to play that kind of thing? And I thought, no, but I do. So sometimes you got to find these things online, because that's the only way to go about doing it. And there was this site that does it globally, and it's fairly anonymous. So I was impressed that I was able to find this podcast through stuff, because I would never put my own personal website, podcast, whatever, on that, just because I like that anonymity, because people can get so toxic on those environments. So I thought I wanted to create this whole other persona, which is barely there to begin with, so I can enjoy the game and then get out and go.
Yeah.
And it was just, seeing it from a broader perspective, it was the most unlikely way to find this podcast. Because I then found through that the YouTube, and that's what I personally have been getting it from. And I thought, well, I would not have found this easily through other means, because I don't have a lot of people around me who come to me with, Dave, you need to check out this podcast, unless it's an entertainment podcast. And most of those are really vapid, shallow podcasts about, hey everyone, we're here with Davo and he's amazing and here's his new amazing movie, you should go watch it. And that's it. It's like, so this one, asking those deep personal questions, which, as you gave the warning to, if anything is too personal, say so. I'm like, I want to be asked those kind of questions. And to find myself really having to dig deep to find answers about where I'm at. So that was just so serendipitous and so fortuitous that I thought I could not turn down the chance to be a part of this podcast. So it all comes down to rolling the dice, literally.
That's a good way to tie it in, man. Yeah, it's very serendipitous. And you know, for on my end of it, I'm just
please.
Yo, I love playing Monopoly. This was even back in my college days, but growing up an only child, I didn't have a lot of people to play with. But the thing I like about the site that we use, shout out RichUp.io, RichUp.io. It's just so fast. It's like, let's roll, let's get the thing going. And then for me, I think I was looking for a game that I didn't want to pay for. Like, I'm somewhat of a gamer. I'll try games here and there. But you know, also like maybe a time killer or something I could play just to relax or not have to overly think about things. So yeah, I think that's where I found it. And then the idea was like, first I just had 34 questions as my name. And then I was like, wait, let me just put podcast there so people I play against can ask a question maybe. I don't know.
That's nice.
And so that's helped out. At least, you know, have people checking it out from here and there globally, which is pretty cool. Because I'm not a great person. I'm not the best person to like promote my stuff. I'm not really good at marketing. I can't convince someone to listen to this because it's better than everything else. That's not how I want to approach it at all. It's more so like, this is available. If you like it, here it is. Which I think Monopoly, with the name 34 Questions Podcast, allows me to do. Feel like it's too in your face. So it works out. And shoot, man, you're the first person from that site to come on here. Thank you for getting the ball rolling. Hopefully, you know, and if we're in the same room, I'm sure we will be at some point. We could definitely talk about it there, and maybe folks will be more open.
Well, you're based in California, right?
Yeah, based in California.
The number of film festivals and stuff that I send my stuff to, like worldwide, but also, of course, obviously California, it would be a great little feather in my cap to go to one of these festivals which show my work, because I only got picked up and carried along with stuff at that level in the last few years, which was over COVID and so on. So when my fifth film, Public Eye, was doing so well globally, I couldn't go and be a part of it because of all those restrictions of travel. But even in what I do, I have met people in such similarly unusual, unlikely ways, but those turn out to be some of the most profound connections, because you don't always meet people who you're meant to meet through those very obvious channels of, you know, just passing on the street or through a friend of a friend. It can easily just easily be through something as random as a online Monopoly game.
For sure.
And then taking the time to actually check that person's bio and say like, oh, there's a link here. I'll follow that. leading onto this YouTube page for 34Questions and being like, I now have my listening experience for the next couple of days because I went through as many of those episodes as I could to get not just a sense of what I was signing up for, but also to learn who your other guests have been. And they've all been so outside of my own sphere, but I found them to be... I never turned one of them off. I got through all of them, and I thought, well, this is someone who doesn't know me from Adam, but I know a bit about them. So that's nice.
And I mean, hopefully they'll get to know you more in your episode as well.
I hope so. Hi, people.
Yeah, hi, strangers. But Davo, I want to thank you again for making time for this. I'm glad it's an afternoon for you, so you still have stuff you can do. Most of the time, me and my guests are just, winding our days down at this point. So I want to say thank you. Hope you have a great rest of your day. I want to thank all the folks out there as well. If you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, definitely appreciate your time as well. Please remember to reach out, reach forward. As always, much love. We'll catch you guys next time. 34 questions. Peace.
Peace to all.
You kind of phase out from there, David.